And well, hello. Welcome everybody to my hotel room in Portland, Oregon. Contrary to popular belief, it is not war ravaged here. It is just lovely. I'm here for a conference and some continuing ed right now, and stepped out of my session this morning to pop back up here and be with you all. So I'm really grateful. Bishop Jen had invited me to this first, so I got to prioritize this,
Recording in progress.
which I love.
Good.
So, thanks.
This is good. Thank you. We can go back to the slides, and probably it's good if the rest of us who are not speaking just mute ourselves so that we cannot get some weird feedback going on too. So I'll do that as well. Jump on in. Thank you.
Okay, did that work again, Jenny? Yes? Great. Well, hi everyone. Grateful to be here. I'm just gonna talk. The Synod does have my slides, so feel free to take notes. But if you want the slides, I'm sure they can send them out to people afterwards. They're all nodding yes. Okay. So I'm just gonna jump right in. And hello, I'm Natalia. As Bishop Jen said, I have a little bit of experience in the digital space, but mostly I am not a tech savant. I'm not a tech person. I don't always understand all the technical pieces, but I have a lot of passion for the area of digital ministry, and working in the digital space and doing ministry in the digital space. So that is the lens that I come here with. If you're asking about recording your worship services, I am not necessarily the right person for that, but I can help connect you to people if those are your questions. So you just let me know. I'm just going to start by a general overview of what digital ministry is actually. So to me, digital ministry is any ministry in the digital space that utilizes digital media and platforms to engage people. So whatever that means. To me, the most essential part is not the platform or the content. The most important part is the ministry. So the way you create spaces, the way you help people grow and develop, connect with God, connect with each other in real and meaningful digital ways. So for some people, that's CaringBridge. For some people, that's Twitter, which maybe is not as true as it used to be, but for some people, that's Twitter. For some people, that's Facebook. For some people, that's Reddit. For some people, that's Discord. It's different for everyone, but the content is important only as it supports community. So for me, when I'm talking about digital ministry, I'm talking about a digital community space, whatever that looks like. So digital ministry is not about being the person who can answer every question about how to use Zoom. Digital ministry for me is not managing your church's social media accounts. Digital ministry is not the responsibility of the person who knows the most about technology or the most about social media or the most about the internet. Digital ministry for me is the pastoral approach to social media that builds relationships, and offers faith formation and pastoral care, one tweet, one Zoom, one TikTok at a time. Though I don't really use TikTok that much, but we'll get there. So one of my favorite digital pastors, Jim Keat, out in New York City, he says, I look at digital ministry like a campfire, something people can gather around, reflect on, and connect with each other as a result. So to picture, I love this image. I just think of picturing the digital space as a campfire. The point is not the campfire, but the experience you share around the campfire, right? The way it forms us and allows us to be each other in that space. So that's what I think of as digital ministry. So I would love, we're going to engage. You can share in the chat. You can raise your hand. I'm not going to put us into groups because we don't need to do that. Everybody panics when we put ourselves into tiny groups, so we don't need to do that. So share challenge by choice in all things, but a story of an experience of community in an online space. A lot of people have stories about the pandemic in particular around this, but it does not need to be that. So when I have taught or shared about this, I often have done these talks with Deanna Thomas from St. Olaf College and the Lutheran Center at St. Olaf College. She often shares her story of caring bridge in the digital space as a lifeline for her when she was going through cancer treatments, to not want to be in person with people. It was too overwhelming for her to connect with people, to be overwhelmed when she went to a physical space because people cared about her, but it was a way she could share her journey and retain some distance, but also retain her community at the same time. So there's a recognition there of some distance and also some connection that I think is really interesting. For me, um, for my community online, I have a very active Marco Polo, which is an asynchronous video chat with a group of 4 other clergy colleagues, and we save each other every single day. I think we experience real community. We talk about ministry and parenthood and marriage in that space. It's asynchronous, which means it's not happening at the same time. So we're chatting with each other and we're seeing each other's faces and we're seeing each other, hearing each other's lives and stories, and we can respond when we have time and not always in the moment. And it has saved my ministry life. It has saved my relationships. It has been a dose of truth and a dose of compassion right when I need it every time. We laugh, we cry, we do all the things together. So that's mine. Would anybody like to share one of those? If you have one. If you don't, it's okay. But if anybody has one, would love to hear. You can raise a hand or you can just start talking. That's also fine.
I was thinking about times when I had really little kids and church was really hard and overwhelming, and evening church and bedtime didn't work, but I needed it. And I can't remember if it was Ash Wednesday or Good Friday service, but I just remember like putting the kids to bed and sitting in front of my laptop and being like, oh, I needed this so bad. So
Yeah.
I can just comment that like during COVID, I mean, it was such hard ministry. We did all of our services on Zoom and then streamed them to other platforms. But to lead worship, like a big service, but on Zoom, um, it was an amazingly intimate time for a lot of our parishioners. And I know some churches really struggled with that and it was hard. And there was a lot of beauty and goodness to it. And so I have a like, oh, and wow, that was really powerful. That experience. And I think for us, the Zoom platform was part of it that was really made it powerful. So it's weird, but it worked.
Anyone else?
Jill put one in the chat.
Thank you.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, that would be great.
Jill said, every Saturday morning since late March 2020, I gather through Facebook Messenger video call with 3 other friends, all who are in ministry but have been good friends for years, and we just support each other in any way we can. We laugh and cry together and keep things real.
Thank you, Jill. Yeah. So I often think we tend to think of digital ministry as something we only did during the pandemic. But I would like us to just put a pin in that for a second and wonder a little bit together about what it looks like to continually do digital ministry. We all have a digital presence and we all have time we spend online, unless we are completely taking a fast or a break from the digital space. We tend to engage with it quite regularly, most of us. There are statistics right now that say Americans, but adults over the age of 18, particularly the age of 18 to 35, spend an average of 8 hours a day online. That is a lot of time online. And some of you have heard me say this before. I know Bishop Jen has heard me say this plenty of times, that to not be present in that 8 hours is an abdication, I think, of our responsibility as leaders, as faith leaders in particular. If you go online and search Christianity, like if you're curious, if you're just an average everyday person and you have a curiosity about Christianity based on something you heard or saw or you wondered about, and you type it in. There are tons of videos. I would challenge you to do that exercise on your own. It's not great, I'm going to warn you. But you get tons of videos, tons of TikToks, tons of reels, tons of YouTube hits about faith and theology, and almost none of them are the theology that we hold dear as Lutherans, this theology of grace that we hold so dear. And so I just believe that one of my passions is to flood the zone. I don't consider it competition. I'm like, we should be out there. I don't think it's taking people away. It's giving people good theology. So there's me getting a little ahead of myself. So one of the biggest questions I get when we have this has been a pushback I've gotten from some leadership, not Bishop Jen, thank God, but thank the Lord for Bishop Jen. But I will just say from other leaders, some pushback I have received is digital ministry incarnational, right? So I've something along the lines of our theology at its core is incarnational. So before we go any further, I just want to get this out of the way and say the answer to this is yes. Digital ministry is incarnational. So right now, wherever you are, camera on or off, I just want you to take your hands and put them on your arms and shoulders. Do you have a body right now? Yes, you have a body. So you are in a body. You don't lose your body when you are in a digital space. You don't become pixels. You are a person right now, just where you are. And the other people who are on this video chat also have bodies and are also still in their bodies in this digital space. We don't become unembodied because we aren't in the same physical space at the same time. The answer to is digital ministry incarnational is yes, it absolutely is. There is a really lovely book. If you're curious about this and you want more information, there is this lovely book by Jason Biasi called Following. And in that book, Jason says that the body of Christ has always been a virtual body. Paul was present at the early churches virtually through letters that were read aloud that became integral to forming the body of Christ. So in some ways, yes, virtual presence is inferior, and in other ways, it is superior. I think it's really important to name that it is not one is better than the other. There is not a moral judgment placed on the digital space. It just is. It just is there, and either we ignore it or we are present in it. And right now, putting it at a distance, saying that it is other and giving the physical spaces we gather in a higher priority tells people something about what we believe. And I think that is not a good message that we are sending when we abdicate our responsibility from being present in those spaces. So the church has always been virtual in some ways. It has always leaned into non-physical presence with each other. One of the things I've said very regularly is we believe at the communion table that God is present across time and space, but not the internet. Like, is that possible? Do we really believe that about God? I believe God shows up across the digital spaces as much as any other way. So when COVID was in the worst of COVID and we weren't allowed to be with people, we blessed people who were dying over iPads and telephones and through curtains and rooms we couldn't attend. And I believe God was present across those moments just as much as when I'm sitting, putting my hand physically on somebody who needs a blessing. And maybe some of you have experiences like that as well, where you've really experienced a powerful phone call, a powerful FaceTime where it has done something to your relationship or you have created space for God to show up. When 2 or 3 are gathered, it doesn't say where in that text. It just says where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am present. And so here God shows up across all these ways we are present with each other. Maybe you've heard this quote before, this beautiful poem from Teresa of Avila, Christ has no body but yours. You can read it. You can read it. It's on your own. Maybe you've read it before. This is true no matter where you are, but there has also been a modern retelling of this by Meredith Gould. Christ has no online presence but yours. So think about it in the same way as this previous poem. however you show up online, Christ shows up. When you go, God goes with you, right? So no blog, no Facebook page but yours. Yours are the tweets through which love touches the world. Yours are the posts through which the gospel is shared. Yours are the updates through which hope is revealed. Christ has no online presence but yours. No blog, no Facebook page but yours. So you could fill in the blank there. A post you wrote this a couple years ago. Now there's exponentially more options for this medium. It keeps growing, things keep changing, things keep growing. But it remains to be true that your presence in the digital space has an impact and matters. I'm going to pause just for a second to see if there are any questions there. I've seen the chat kind of popping up, but I haven't gone to it.
I can keep an eye on it too. I just put up the link for that book you just mentioned by Jason by us. Yeah, following.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to have us do this little fun exercise here. So if you have a piece of paper on you, I think some of you are taking notes, great. If you want to just visualize this, that's also fine too. I think it's fun we're going to draw a Venn diagram. So I just want, before you draw anything, I want you to hear the instructions and then you can draw so you don't have to erase and start over. So you're going to draw two circles. One represents the people you interact with in person, and one represents the people you interact with online. And I'm curious about how big your overlap is. So I have people with whom I only have a digital relationship, right? There are people, because I have a podcast community that stretches across the nation and the world. We have quite a few people in Australia that listen. I don't know what's going on down there, but we have a big audience in Australia. I'm probably never going to meet them. I will never interact with them in face-to-face, real life, in-person conversations, but they are a part of my digital community. They are people I interact with regularly. And then there are people with whom like the 5 people I have my Marco Polo group with, I chat with them regularly and we get together in real life. So they would be in that middle section, right? And then there are people with whom I have in-person relationships that I don't have any online relationship with. So kind of think about how big your overlap is between your two Venn diagram circles. This is not an exercise I'm going to have you share unless you really want to, but just to have the idea that there are both. And sometimes it's great to go to a digital community because you get something there that you don't get somewhere else, and to recognize what that is and wonder about it and be curious about it. And same with the people who you interact with that don't overlap, that you only interact with in person, and what do you get from them that you don't go? And then to wonder a little bit about when you seek out each one. When do I go online and seek out an online community? Is there a chat group I'm a part of, or a Facebook group I'm a part of that I want to interact with when something happens in my life or in somebody else's life or in the world? I think we all have those. We just don't necessarily think about them in that way. Just like our own community is not found in one or the other, right? And there's overlap. And in some ways there's overlap, in some ways there's none at all. Ministry, I think, is the exact same. And I want us to think about ministry in the same way that we think about our online life and our in-person life, right? Sometimes the ministry we do is for both, and sometimes it's just for one or the other. In the same way, it is not good or bad, it just is. Like, we are allowed to have ministry in the digital space, and it is for them and them alone. And sometimes we are allowed to do ministry for in-person spaces, and it is for them and for them alone. It does not make one better or worse than the other. It just is. So some of your discernment in thinking about digital ministry and ministry in the digital space, I think, is figuring out where in that Venn diagram of ministry you are called to serve. So I have a colleague here in Minneapolis. Well, I'm not in Minneapolis, but there in Minneapolis. And he has said to me, he just thinks digital Bible studies and book studies are exhausting. He just highly dislikes them. He finds them to be soul sucking in his life. He just says, it's not that I don't find it valuable, it just drains the life out of me. And I'm always like, send them to me, I'll do it. I love an online Bible study. I I will do this with your people and I will love it and I will send them back to you. I'm not stealing sheep. I'm sending them back to you. I don't want them in my congregation. I want them in your congregation, but I am happy to share this ministry because I find it important and I don't want something soul sucking for a colleague. I want something that's life-giving. So we don't all one of my little side soapboxes, if digital ministry is my main soapbox, my side soapbox is that pastors do not have to be generalists. We are told that we are supposed to be generalists. I just don't believe that at my absolute core. We don't all have to do all the things. We don't have to do everything kind of okay. We can choose to do a few things and do them very well. And we can share our resources and our leadership across churches for the sake of the Big C church. And I think the digital space is the perfect time to do this, where not every pastor has to do all the digital things, but we can find colleagues who love doing this, who want to do it, and encourage them to do it and support them to do it. So there aren't 50 pastors doing a book study on the same book with their own people, but you can send them all to one book study and the book study becomes more life-giving and more valuable because we have more perspectives from more congregations in the mix. So, yes, that is a soapbox. Oof. So here's some points of tension. Here's my little Slack dumpster fire because there are some things happening in the online community that are difficult for people. So I'm just going to name 3 of them right here. I think the 3 biggest points of tension for digital ministry are sacraments, the current state of digital spaces, which is the dumpster fire emoji. I think the dumpster fire is not as cute as that in real life, but there it is. And a little moment to talk about AI as well. Digital sacraments have been controversial across the denominations, across the ELCA. I find them to be not controversial. I think it is very faithful to do sacraments for people who have requested it. So during the pandemic, the Cafeteria Christian community did do the podcast that I have with Pastor Emmy Kegler. We did digital communion services on occasion because people weren't going into churches and they were not receiving communion, and it mattered to them to receive it. And so often I think they think the argument is they're either going to come to church or they're going to come to church and get the thing they want, or they're going to get it in the digital space. And that is not true. The actual choice is I'm going to get it in the digital space or I'm not going to get it at all. That is what a lot of people's experience of the digital space is. They're not going to walk into a building. There are a lot of people who have chosen to not come into a church and they will not come into a church. And so for them, my question is, what are we doing? How are we welcoming them? How are we engaging with them? If a sacrament is the tether that holds somebody to the body of Christ, then I think we deserve to offer that to people however we can. So I happened to be pretty passionate about this. I know that not every person in leadership agrees with me, and that's all right. I'm grateful that Bishop Jen does agree with me on this, and I don't feel scared saying it in a digital space where she is also present in the room, but I know there are other places where people have big disagreements about that. I think withholding sacrament is not what I'm called to do. I'm just not called to withhold sacraments from people. So I'm happy to talk more about that if anybody wants to push on it or have some conversation, but I'll leave that there. The current state of digital spaces is kind of ick for a lot of people right now. It is very difficult to be there. It is full of slop. It is full of fake pictures, fake news, fake stories, ads, lots of garbage is just hanging out online. And so I know there are a lot of people choosing to leave digital spaces intentionally. So again, I think there's a danger here if we haven't created images of what we do as Lutherans, as ELCA congregations, as worth checking into, then we have lost people as they leave the digital space, which might be our only tether. They're not walking into our churches. So to commit to being there, whatever that looks like, to consistently or on occasion put out beautiful statements about what our faith says in this particular time and place, I think does really matter. To take a stand, to have some moral clarity and courage in moments where people look to faith leaders for what they need to be doing or where they need to be going. I think it matters that we as faith leaders put ourselves out there in the digital space, even though it does, I understand very much, open us up to things that we do not want to receive. So it is not an easy place to be, and I understand that people are stepping away, but I think having glimpses of what we believe and our beautiful theology, which has so much to say in this time and place, out in the mix of all this stuff that is saying something different, is really hopeful and important that we stay engaged. And then lastly, AI. If I'm happy to share, my congregation that I currently serve at wrote what did I call a policy? There it is. Oh, I'm losing words. That we wrote a policy on our AI use, recognizing that it's not going anywhere, and how do we offer our perspectives on it, wondering what it looks like. How do we, as a congregation who cares about climate justice and climate change, use AI responsibly? Do we use AI responsibly? It is a question that we don't have answers to, but we're just trying to navigate this together and wondering what it looks like. So also being very clear about when we use it, when we don't use it, what percentage of time we're using it, or how we are choosing not to use it in this time matters. So being clear, I when I say like, I started this with the help of AI, like if I didn't, like, what do I use? What's an example? Oh, like a newsletter article. If I started with the bones of AI, I'm going to tell people I started with AI so that they don't give me credit for something I didn't do. Or I'm making a moral clarity stance for myself to say, I'm not going to use AI for whatever reason, but that you're communicating that. AI is tricky. My spouse works in tech. He loves AI. He thinks it's wonderful. We have lots of very interesting conversations about this at the dinner table because we don't necessarily agree about its use. But it is not going anywhere, and it is getting it's getting better, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending, again, which side of the argument you are on, which side of the dinner table at my house you're on. It is not going anywhere, and it is getting better. So we do have to have conversations about it that are honest and hold something about who we are as people of God and people of faith in the mix as well. Okay. I have a couple of questions for people to think about. And you can reflect on your own. If anybody wants to answer it out loud, feel free to do those as well. But as you're doing your own discernment around the digital space, just making quick lists of these questions. So the first one, what are some ways your faith community utilizes digital technology for ministry? So just whatever community you're attached to, what are some ways you use digital technology, any technology, but digital technology for ministry? So if that's, we stream to Facebook, we post reels, we do social media posts about sermon series or sermon or worship services, any of that stuff. What are some ways your faith community uses it? Do you want to use more? Do you want to do less? Do you want to change it? Thinking about that is helpful. And then the second question I would wonder is, how is your use of digital technology enhancing your mission as a congregation? And how is it challenging the mission of your congregation? How is it, I don't want to say enhancing, I don't want to say minimizing, but how does it harm? It's maybe too strong of a word, but how does it challenge your mission? Maybe is just the better one. It can do both. And so we can't talk about ministry in the digital space without noting the shadow sides of what it can do and what it cannot do, what is possible and what is harmful. I think it's both. So it's important to sort of take some time to reflect on this and wonder. Does anybody want to share or ask any questions?
I guess I can offer that digital ministry here is not complicated. It's not very robust or innovative. It's really just the live streams. for worship.
Mhm.
But our current counts are we have between 25 to 40% of our people worship online. And that's a primary way where they show up. And I think the shadow side of that is that because people know it's an option now, the space that we embody, those of us who are present, feels different. I would say in some ways it does feel diminished, especially when the service numbers get below a certain threshold. And then it also, and I don't love that I'm cognizant of this, but also when the service gets below a certain threshold in terms of its population, it looks bad on camera. And that's a real thing I think about.
No, thank you, Dan. That is real. That's, yeah. Anyone else?
I can comment that sometimes when things are being recorded, so things that are on camera often are recorded, it feels like things that live on forever and ever and ever, amen, in the kind of the bowels of the internet world can get really complicated and can get sometimes dangerous, but just also it can cause more critique and feedback in ways that aren't always helpful. I would rather have a conversation about a tension or a disagreement in real time, even online in real time with somebody, than I want them like coming back to me 2 years later about that thing you said such and such a time. And that feels, those are harder to deal with and harder to kind of navigate and often kind of feel like a time suck. And I don't always appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the congregation where I'm currently serving, I did not write this policy or help with it. It was in place before I got there, but they had received some intense scrutiny from outside sources in years past, and so they have a pretty strong. They remove videos of sermons and worship services after 2 weeks. They don't remain online forever. So I think it's a pretty good policy. It doesn't live there forever. Our admin hangs on to all of them forever. So if somebody does want to see them, they can send her a note and want to see this again. Yes, you can. I think that's great. I also happen to like that in terms of my preaching. I don't want some bro from some other place stealing the sermon I wrote that I spent a lot of time with and did a lot of work on, and it's out there in the world forever. I don't want somebody stealing my work and passing it off as their own, which has happened. So I think it's good to think about what your policies are and what your procedures are around those things and why. So Brian, you had unmuted. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, we're doing the standard stuff with live streaming and our stay out there forever at the moment. So it's an interesting proposition that they be removed after a period of time. I'm intrigued by that. But the other thing we're doing in addition to the live streaming and the like is we do dream about being able to take excerpts from the sermon and create reels and those types of things. We're dreaming about that. We're not doing it today. One of the things we are doing is we have a mobile app that is pretty widely used throughout the congregation. And in that app, there's a prayer wall where people can post their prayers. And it's done within a secure environment. So they're not publishing them publicly, but other people then can pray for them, and there's a way for the person who posted the prayer to see how often they're lifted up. But the rest of us can't. So it doesn't have the social media who's got the better prayer request feel. It's just a more of a private, but the person who requested it can see that they've received 45 or 50 prayers today, that type of thing. So really, really cool. We're not getting as much use of it as we'd like, but we'd like to see more. But it's a cool way to create that asynchronous digital experience.
Thank you, Brian. Can you tell me what the app is that you all use? I bet that's somebody's question out there.
Yeah, it's integrated with our church management system. So it's come from a company called Touchpoint.
Mhm. Okay.
Pastor Natalia, how about I put some of these things that are in the text or the message chat line out there, just because some people are driving and not able to read them. Craig Peterson commented, couldn't type earlier, wanted to share that digital ministry allowed Synod ministry to continue during COVID and enhanced our ministry afterward. We did many call processes and council and committee meetings online. This very training today wouldn't have been happened 5 years ago. Aaron Abdisa said digital tools such as our phones, cameras, apps, and online platforms are not holy or evil on their own. They're simply tools shaped by the hands and hearts of people. What matters is what we do with them. When we use them to share hope, spread truth, encourage others, or lift up God's name, something ordinary becomes sacred. The screen becomes a space of grace. The post becomes a prayer. The tool becomes a vessel of purpose. Amen.
Amen.
Brian said it would be helpful if you would share a copy of the AI policy. We're wrestling with the need for one.
Yeah, I'll send that to Jenny and she can send it out to people who are on this, who registered for this.
Great. Jill said, I'd like us to diversify and be more intentional on social media, but for now, we're mostly being very consistent with our email communication. Joseph wrote, the shadow side I see is prioritizing of digital spaces over in-person, especially among youth who find it hard to connect with each other and easy to scroll. Agree with what Bishop Nagel said as well, especially with lay people who aren't comfortable with public speaking. Jill said, yes, we adopted that policy too, to minimize the possibility. This is when we're talking about how long things stay online, that somebody can capture and manipulate our media for their own purposes. And Dan Nelson commented, work stealing is a major concern with AI as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks everybody for all those comments. There are a lot of, again, when you say digital ministry, it's so broad. I mean, it is so broad. It means like Zoom, and it means streaming your services, and it means like all the ways you show up online, and all of those keep growing and keep getting, more and more complex. And so it is really hard to wonder. But I think when you ask that first question, what is digital ministry in your context? And then you can be honest about what that is. Like, the church that I attend when I'm not, when I'm in between calls or when I'm off on a Sunday, the church I attend, they do not stream their services, and they are fine with that. They are fine with that. They don't feel like they are abdicating anything by not streaming. And there are other churches that do. I mean, Dan, having that big number of people joining and watching online, I have so many questions about that, because is it synchronous or asynchronous? Like, are they watching at the time of worship, or are they watching at a different time? That's super interesting. Some analytics have that information and some don't. If you have a huge number of people watching in real time from their homes, I think I've seen some churches experiment with digital engagement, that they have a person whose job it is on Sunday morning to be in the chat on Facebook or wherever you're streaming and engage with the people who are watching in real time. That I know, understand that takes people power, and not all of us have that. But it is wondering like what we want to spend our resources on and how we want to do this. Brian, I have a person that I pay to cut parts of my podcast and put it online with quotes and all the things, like do that for me. Like I don't, it would take me infinite amount of time longer than it takes this 20 something. So I just feel like to find the right people and invite them to do it and pay them for their work, if it is, or find a volunteer who loves to do it and wants to give of that time and talent in your congregation. There are those options. I think there are ways we can engage online that really matter. And that if we have committed ourselves to, this is what digital ministry means for us, and we've decided that's what this is, then we double down on that and say like, okay, we have this big percentage. What we look like in this space matters. How are we going to double down on it? I mean, Dan, I just keep thinking that number is astounding to me. I don't think you're alone actually, but with that number, but it is like, we should be talking about this. That's almost almost half of our congregation watching online is no small number. And recognizing what percentage of them I mean, to me, the question, and you can't answer this, so it's just, I understand that. This is a big question, but like what percentage of them, if you weren't streaming, would stream somewhere else or come to your congregation or not come at all, right? Those are like, they're one of those three categories. I think the number of people that listen to my podcast that I have talked with about this, there are a lot of them who engage with the podcast who do not attend worship somewhere else. They just don't. This is it for them. And that has to be okay. And we have to be, if I'm the only um, pastor they know, okay, then how can I minister to them in the way that matters? If this is the only church community they're a part of, how can we still minister to them when it matters? When they call on us and they say, I have not been in your church for 2 years, but I watch online all the time. Are you going to not be their pastor? Of course you're going to be their pastor still. And so to recognize that what it means to be a pastor in this day and age has changed, but we can't ignore the digital space or sometimes make them feel like they are less valuable and less important because they are not showing up in person, right? I think some of the stories I've heard from people do feel like, well, we just need to stop streaming because if we stop streaming, then they'll come back to church, right? Like that. I'm sure some of you have heard that argument. We just need to not do that, and then they'll come back. And the question to me is like, will they? I'm not sure everybody will. And I'm not sure that's an experiment I would like to risk people on. I don't really want to do that harm work on people. I think I would rather offer them a place to remain engaged, like I said, a tether to the community.
Natalia, are you familiar? The Pew Foundation did some research in the last few years on digital worship participation. And I
Yeah.
think one of the conclusions was that most of our online participants, worship participants, are people who are, quote, raving churchgoers already. And so they use it as a way to stay connected, not necessarily as a substitute. Now, we all experience that differently, but I do think there's we see it in our own experience. We know that there are people who use it as a way to stay connected when they can't be physically present. And I like to think in the grand scheme, that's where the majority of people are that view our live stream. But we don't know for fact. I'm just using, some data points that I've seen out there on the topic.
Yeah, and I think we can do a little eighth commandment on this too, right? And like what is the best take, most charitable, grace-filled take we can give people who have chosen to worship online? It is not that they are lazy. It is not that they are, like our most charitable take is for whatever reason they cannot be with us, but they have chosen to be here anyway. And so how can we offer them the same kind of gracious and beloved community that we offer those who gather with us in person, right? And so and that will, I believe, truly, when we engage in the digital space and make them feel like they matter and they are a part of it and they are with us. I mean, even the simple turn of when you offer, you're standing at the communion table, you do the words of institution, and you look up at your camera and you say the body of Christ given for you and the blood of Christ shed for you to the camera, to the digital visitors, right? The digital participants, the digital worshipers. That is a tiny change you can make that makes a huge difference. You're here, I see you, I know you're with us, right? I can't see you, I guess is not true. But to say like I can't see you, but I know you are here and you are a part of this thing we are doing together right now, right? You are a part of the table, you are a part of the meal. That can be enough for people. And I can tell you there was a Sunday I forgot to look at the camera and do it. Boy, did we hear about it. Like that's how you know, right? Like it matters. And it wasn't the like shamey. It was like you forgot, and I just want you to remember that we know when you do it. We want you to know we're here, and we want you to know that, like, we want you to say that we're here, and so we do it, and it matters. And so to ask yourself each week who's online, to give yourself I mean, it's worth, I think it's a big enough deal to set aside a little time on Monday or whatever, if you don't work on Mondays, Tuesday, and to say who is online, who commented, who, emojied however they did, who participated, how might I engage them in a different and new way? How might I make them feel like they are a part of this community? So that they do feel like that tether is real and they're showing up, and it is not because they are lazy or they've decided coming to church is too much trouble. Um, I think of what Jenny said about young kids. Like sometimes it is too much to to drag your screaming child with you to church. It's just too much. Or they have, you know, done a diaper explosion right as you're walking out the door, and you're like, well, I guess that's it. Either I show up 20 minutes late or I don't show up. I guess I'll watch online. Like we can offer that grace for people and that space for people. And I think it's worth saying, just because you've chosen to be online, you are not less than, and you are not less a part of this community of faith. You are still with us, and we see you, and know that you're here. Oh, I got a little soapboxy there. Sorry.
It's okay. We follow the practice that you do about looking at the camera during that moment in communion. The other thing that we've gotten feedback on is actually around the sharing of the peace and making sure that we're intentional about looking at the camera at some point, or maybe even a separate or an additional sharing of the peace intentionally with the folks that are worshiping online.
Does anyone else want to share any curiosities or wonderings or comments?
I think one of my biggest challenges is there's so many different ways that you can do digital ministry. There's so many things you can use, social media platforms you can be a part of, be on, and it's like no way we can do them all. And which are the ones that we really want to like hone in on and get good at. And because if you're not doing it well, if you're not doing it consistently, it's not worth it. But like, just how do you choose which ones are the right ones? And how do you find the time? Because it's always changing. There's always new things. And like, you got to be up on it. And I mean, Instagram changed their ratios of their photos, like, by the way, no one told us that, but now you have to like, they're not going to show up if they're not vertical. They're not going to show up as much. And so it's like all of those things that you have to like be keeping up on and put the time and energy into, I think is one of my biggest challenges with just all digital ministry in all the ways. But
yeah, I think that's very true. And again, like we are not generalists. We are not required to do all of the digital things. Like nobody can do that. I mean, I cannot spend that much time online. It makes me crazy. Like truly, I am a less good version of myself if I spend a lot of time online. So like I understand the need to not do everything and to not be a part of every opportunity there is available, but to choose the ones that matter, that have the most reach, where more people say they connect or engage. So even if your congregation has chosen not to stream, you could make an incredible WhatsApp group or Signal group if you want to be a part of the away from any of algorithms. You could create a group, invite people to join, show them how to join, and have an ongoing connection into your congregation, right? You could create a Signal group for just prayer requests, and people could see that and do it if you don't have the access like Brian does to an app that works in that way. But to choose one or two things and really, yeah, get good at them, hone in on them, put money behind them if you have it. If you have a foundation or you have some donor that you think you could ask to say like, we think this really matters and we'd like to work on it for this amount of time, report back. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's okay if it doesn't work. We at least tried something, and we put some energy and some resources behind it to see what we could do if we tried something like this. So choose one. It doesn't have to be all of the things, but choose one thing. If that's a digital, engager on a Sunday morning, try it. Just try it for a little while, report back. You're not signing on to do it forever, but just trying things in the digital space is enough. I would love us to flood the zone with good theology, and caring pastors, and grace abounding in the digital space where those things are hard to find. And I would love us to just everybody trying different things and seeing what it looks like and wondering together how we do this thing this pastor thing or this faith thing in the digital space as well as in person. Especially because, again, 8 hours a day, y'all, that's so much time. That's so much time. It's so much time. So I know we want to value in person as the best, but like that's 1 hour a week and people are online 8 hours a day. Like that is a bonkers, a wildly different, a bonkers differential between those two. So to question together, to wonder as a community, whatever your community, your council, your leadership, whatever, to wonder, where's the one place we can engage the digital community, the people who are here? How can we do that? How can we dig in a little more over the next 6 months or a year or whatever that looks like? It would be really interesting to see what that would be like.
Pastor Natalia, I'm watching the time and knowing that we have just a few more minutes. Is there anybody who hasn't had a chance to share or that would like to share something else? Some have been adding to the chat line a little. I can read those, but if others have things to share, please do. We don't, Dan said we don't have well-researched numbers, but anecdotally our online numbers seem to be mostly driven by those who are ill/elderly and people who are looking to come in person, but want to see what happens here before they attend. So that's a cool visitation or visitor kind of opportunity too. Nathan responds, our experience as well, though we do have folks, at least 2 of the 20 who regularly join online. We also say that they just prefer to stay in their PJs and have their coffee. Jill says, I maintain that people choosing to show up for church in person or online feels like a major miracle. People choosing to listen, to interact with their church community, all gift. And I commented about using GroupMe as a platform for texting and communicating, separate from normal messaging.
I mean, I have all the apps on my phone, so it's just like, it is what it is, right? You just do what you can do.
Anything else people want to share? I'm also curious if there's other subjects that relate to, this is kind of a more general digital ministry, but you really got us thinking kind of philosophically and theologically about it, and I really appreciate that, Pastor Natalia. But if people have other areas of this, like other angles that you'd be really interested in us having some sessions with Pastor Natalia to talk about, or somebody else who has some other experience with it, we would welcome that. So let us know if there's other angles.
Yeah, I mean, I will just stand on this forever, but it is not a technology issue, it's a theological issue, right? That's what this really is, a theological issue. This is ministry in the digital space is not just about the technology, it is about our theology. And we are giving up this space, this 8 hours a day, to the worst theologians. And I just believe we have so much grace and beauty and truth about who God is to put into that space as well. And I want us to be thinking theologically about the digital space and not just, what one we're going to use and how we're going to use it and the technology around it, but thinking theologically about it, because the body of Christ has always been a digital body. And so like, what does that look like? It has always been virtual. It has always been, I mean, digital in terms of paper, I guess, letters, but like it has always been a virtual body of Christ. And so what does that look like in this time and place? And how God shows up in this time and place really matters.